Well, if you already have a setup so that you have a path to becoming financially independent or being able to afford your own financial lifestyle, it's going to make all of that settlement and that pressure just like be gone.
Nice.
And the faster you can resolve your divorce, the faster you can move on, grieve the loss of your marriage, and find your next step. Create your new dream.
Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up, where we flip the script on conventional legal discussions. I'm Rachel King, here to guide you through the murky waters of family law, estate conflicts, inheritance disputes, all of the dramas. We're not just talking about law, we're talking about how it affects your life, your rights, your future, and your money. From the courtroom to your living room, we bring you insights that matter. Dive into each episode ready to challenge, learn, and grow. Ready to change the dialogue? Let's begin. Gavels down, voices up.
It's all about financial confidence and divorce because that seems almost like an oxymoron. And if you know anybody that's gone through a divorce, they'll probably agree, but it's not forever. And we're going to go into some of the things that I found have worked for my clients over the years because, of course, it's important. First, I want to remind you that my book is here. Yay, Getting Divorced Now What? It is everything. I wouldn't say everything. It is a lot of tips and tricks that I learned as an attorney, 10 years doing family law in the courtroom, so that you can navigate your divorce hopefully more successfully. And yeah, it even comes with an available workbook to help you get through your situation the best. So whether it's for you or a friend or colleague, family member that you know, head over gettingdivorcednowwhat.com for your copy and a free chapter of my new book. But let's get started because who doesn't want to talk about money? Actually, I heard a while ago that money, sex, and parenting were the top 3 most contentious issues in marriage and that they were the cause of divorce. In most cases, it could be traced back to one of those. And so we're kind of the takeaway is that maybe people don't like talking about money, or there's so much conflict and misunderstanding about money that it can actually cause the breakdown in your marriage, which is devastating. But what can be equally devastating are the financial effects of a divorce. So it's not over. You will be okay. And we're going to get into it. If you've been to court, then you probably have heard at some point that the idea behind the division of assets and debts and support is to make sure that both spouses maintain the marital standard of living. But let's be honest, I say it over and over again that if you have one bucket of money providing for one household, it's impossible to take that same bucket and divide it to 2 households of the same standard. And the reality is that when you get divorced, there is typically a setback of about 20 to 30% of your financial resources. This means that you're probably not going to be able to maintain the same standard of living, at least initially. But fear not, 1-2 years down the road, if you take certain steps, then you can not only be back to where you were during the marriage, but hopefully you can be better off. Because, isn't that the reason that you got divorced in the first place, was to be better, have better, and live better? I think so. So let's get into it. Whenever somebody walks into my office and they say they are either getting divorced or they're involved in a divorce, I always ask if they work. And sometimes people accuse me as an attorney of asking about their income levels because they want to make sure that my fees can get paid. And I would be lying if I said that that isn't one of the reasons. However, that is like the last reason that I care about what income people make and whether they're working. My biggest reason is that no matter what you were doing, whether you were the primary breadwinner, whether you were the stay-at-home spouse, whatever the situation was, when you are going to be getting divorced, you've got to get a job. You have got to be on a road to being financially independent because, again, there's only so much money. You're likely to face a reduction in your standard of living, your financial resources, but also you're only going to get support for so long. The idea behind support is that the supported party becomes self-supporting. And then you can never totally rely on support because if your ex stops working or gets laid off or injured or dies even, guess what happens to your support? It is no more. So when I'm working with clients, the first thing I find out is what is your income, what can you do, and how fast can you get a job? Or make sure that you keep the job that you have. There's nothing that is more shocking to me, maybe as a financially independent woman myself, as somebody who walks into my office and says, well, I never worked, so I don't think I should ever have to work. Or on the flip side, somebody that says, well, I would rather quit my job than pay support. I'm going to reduce my income just to get out of paying support. Both of those to me are really, one, bad for your case, but in the long run, they're really bad for you. You're not hurting anybody but yourself by reducing your income, whether that is because you stay home, you get laid off, you quit, or whatever the case may be. The next thing I talk about, so that's the first thing you should do is evaluate what your income is or if there's a way for you to increase your income. If you have children at home, maybe there's a side hustle that you can get involved in. Maybe there's some kind of work from home job. Maybe you can work at nights and on alternate schedules as the other parent. So you can work out a custody schedule that allows both of you to have time, but also to work. Really being flexible and keeping an open mind on how you can bring in some kind of income is most crucial. Also, don't think, oh, I've got to get a job, my dream job, or a job that pays buckets and buckets of money. That's not realistic either. Start one place, just one thing, one job, 1 hour, minimum wage, whatever it is, and take it. And then you can work your way up. It's also important to note that while assets are going to be divided, community property will be divided equally, and you have a right to half of the assets, which can be really helpful if you have assets, to giving you a stepping stone as you increase your earning potential. And you will most likely in a divorce have both parties be expected to work full-time minimum wage. That's just the reality. So even if you say, nope, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to work, I can't, I have all of these reasons I can't, even if they're legit reasons, the court's very likely to come in and say, yeah, well, we think that you can work full-time minimum wage. And so they'll just assume you have that income coming in. So if they're going to assume it, you might as well bring it in, right? And what does imputation mean? Imputation means they can't make you go work, right? We have those pesky constitutional provisions of no slavery, no forced labor, and no involuntary servitude. So it sort of falls under that. The court can't force you to go get a job, but they can say, we don't really understand why you're not getting a job. So while we can't force you to go get a job, we can say that we think you should be working. And if you were working full-time minimum wage, you'd be bringing in maybe $2,000 per month. So when we calculate your support, we're going to say that you have an income of $2,000 coming in. Whether you do or not, they're going to impute you at that. And then they're going to calculate support as though you're earning it. So again, you might as well. I had a client named Lisa, and she came in and she was really upset. She was not a stay-at-home spouse, but she definitely worked part-time. She'd given up her career for quite a while, I think 15 or 16 years in the marriage. And her children were in school, middle school. They didn't need her all the time, but she still really wanted to be part of their life. She was used to them, being home or coming home to her in the evenings, getting them ready for school. She was definitely that parent. When she got divorced, she still was employed part-time. And so as we were talking about, her ability to work full-time, her work schedule, and her marital standard of living, because that's important as an attorney to know, we were also talking about what was going to happen to the family home. Were the kids going to be staying in their own school? And we brought in the financial aspect. And Lisa decided that she wasn't going to be able to live in the exact same community and city that she had before. But she also didn't want to worry about transplanting her children super far away. She didn't want to take on the custody battle of trying to fight for a move away order. So instead she said, how can I find a place that's maybe within 20 miles of where we live now that's more affordable? And she downsized. This did two things. It gave her more financial confidence. It reduced her needs. Yes, of course, she wanted the beautiful house and the perfect neighborhood, but that wasn't reality for right now. So she separated her wants from her needs. And then she really looked at it and said, this is going to be a temporary stepping stone. And this is something that I think I can afford given my part-time income, working on getting a full-time job, my child support, and my spousal support. And it will also allow our kids to have a reasonable custody schedule where they're still having as much time with each other or with both parents as possible. So she made that decision on her own. And I talk about her because it was so awesome that through conversation she'd come to the reality. It's so much easier if you can figure it out on your own and make that decision on your own. You're in a place of control and power rather than sitting across from me as your attorney and telling you the hard truths about what income is going to be, what life is going to look like, and the financial realities of divorce. Or, oh my gosh, even worse, a judge telling you, like, so sorry, you don't get to live there, not our problem that you can't afford this town. Judges don't do that. They're just going to rip off the Band-Aid and order some support. And you're going to be sitting there across from the table like, and how in the world am I supposed to afford shelter and food and car and clothes and all of the things? And the court's going to say, I don't know, not my problem. The fact that Lisa was able to do this early on in her divorce really put her on a trajectory to become very happy and financially secure within a year. And we were able to resolve her divorce in about 8 months, which seems maybe like an eternity, but in the scheme of divorces, that's not too bad. And I followed up with her about a year and a half after her divorce. She had a job that she loved that was full time. Her kids were able to stay in the same school. They'd worked out a co-parenting schedule that worked, but she was so excited to tell me that she qualified for a new house. She wasn't going to be able to move back into the original neighborhood that she lived in when she was married, but she was able to get her own house, qualify on it herself, and be on title on it. And that was nothing she'd ever been able to do in her life. So for her, not only was she in a place of huge control and confidence in her own life, but she was able to reach a goal that she didn't even know she wanted or that she had. And for the rest of her life, she never has to worry about a house anymore because she bought one on her own. She qualified on her own, and it's her own separate property that she got after marriage. So yeah, if she gets remarried, we might have to worry about it. But for now, it was really powerful. And the fact that she did it so quickly is just hats off to you, Lisa. Just a moment for a quick break. Are you struggling with the legal and emotional tolls of divorce? Let me, Rachel King, help guide you. Head over to gettingdivorcednowwhat.com/free chapter for your copy of the first chapter of my new book, Getting Divorced Now What? Learn tips to navigate your divorce in the most successful way possible. The full book is coming out January 15th, and you can pre-order yours now. Now let's get back to the show. One of the biggest things I also hear from clients is food. When we do support and when we're looking at financials during a divorce, we fill out this pretty extensive income and expense declaration that asks all sorts of questions, not just your rent and your utilities, but it wants to know how much you spend on entertainment, how much you donate to charity, how much you pay for cleaning supplies and household goods. I mean, it asks a lot of detail. It wants to know any reoccurring payments you have, credit card debt, all of it. And it takes a while to fill out. And then you get to court and you find out that really the court doesn't care about almost any of it. There's a predetermined formula that considers like the average cost of living, and they don't care that you spend $2,500 on food for your 3 teenage boys as opposed to food for, 2 or 3 toddlers. It just doesn't matter. It's all the same. But that's a huge difference. I'm feeding teenagers. Oh my gosh, the saying is true, they eat you out of house and home. So what do? Well, I had another client named Joe, and Joe was going to become a single dad. He worked full time. He was a real stand-up guy, and he ended up being, because of circumstance, though there was nothing going on with mom, just how it played out, that he ended up being the primary parent. And by primary parent, I mean he was the one that had most of the school time and 1 weekend a month, and mom had the other weekends a month and some midweek visits. And he, quite frankly, could not afford the food that his children were eating. He just said, I don't understand. Isn't there some kind of hardship that we can ask for? I just can't do this. I can't work anymore, and I cannot afford the food. And I had to break it to him that, like, the courts don't really care that you can't afford groceries. So he also came in when I was talking to him about, what we were going to do and some strategy for the upcoming hearings. And he was so excited. He said, "Oh my gosh, have you ever meal prepped?" And I laughed because yes, I've meal prepped. And it was cute because it was like a phenomenon to him. And he said he'd never done it before, but for the previous 2 months, he'd gotten very strict on meal prepping snacks, meals with his children, really putting together an organized plan and to reduce his grocery bill about 50% just by taking a little bit of planning. They were still able to eat out, he said, but they've reduced how much they ate out, and everybody was happy. It wasn't like his kids were hurting or were hungry or felt like they were missing out on entertainment opportunities. Sure. Did Joe and his family like eating out at nice restaurants? Yes. But for this period of time where there was this adjustment where he had to pay some spousal support, he had to figure out how to become the primary parent of his children, all of it was really a financial and emotional toll. And this was one way that he figured out that if he just took a little time to meal prep, it would save him money because the courts weren't going to give him any extra because of the cost of groceries. Now, I'm not saying you have to meal prep. Maybe meal prepping is not your thing, but I do think it's really important as you're filling out that income and expense declaration and you're looking at your overall costs. And I say the expected costs of when you're single. If you're still cohabitating, what is it going to look like when you're living on your own? And what are your needs? What are your wants? What are the most important deal breakers? And where can you take a little bit of time to adjust your finances? Because you can expect that your financial resources are going to be reduced by about 30%. You know that already. Sure, ask the court for all of the money in the world, but there's only so much money and you're only getting part of it. If you can understand that and figure out where you can cut just a little bit, then it's going to make your divorce journey a little bit easier. Not only will it make your divorce journey easier, it will make you feel freer and in more control of settlement. Because if you are trying to get enough money in assets or the house because you think you need to live in the same neighborhood or support because you can't afford the groceries or whatever the case may be, if you figure out how to reduce your financial need a little bit for yourself, at least for the short term, it will make you feel more in control of your settlement, and settlement will be more likely because you're not going to be nickel and diming settlement. And I can tell you, after doing so many divorces, nickel and diming settlements end up costing more in the long run. I don't even know how many people I literally had to sit down and say, we are fighting over a difference of $300 per month in child support. And you might be hearing this thinking, oh my God, $300 a month could change my life. And I'm not saying it can't, but I'm saying 3 times 12 is 36. And so that's only $3,600 per year. And then you multiply that out by however many years you're going to get support, assuming it never changes. And now we're going to add in the cost of your attorney, the emotional toll, the length of time that this is going to take to even get it, and then the risk that you might not get it. And really, most of the time, the cost benefit analysis plays out and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to fight over the $300. Well, if you already have a setup so that you have a path to becoming financially independent or being able to afford your own financial lifestyle, it's going to make all of that settlement and that pressure just like be gone. And the faster you can resolve your divorce, the faster you can move on, grieve the loss of your marriage, and find your next step, create your new dream. So what do? I tell people, of course, you got to get a job. You've got to look at your needs versus wants. You've got to be realistic in how much money the community had and now how it's going to afford 2 households. What are your realistic contributions going to be toward the other household, or what kind of sacrifices are you going to have to make? Are you going to have to get a job? Reduce your resources. Starting with a budget can be really helpful. There are free apps like Mint that you can go on and start filling it in, look at your bank statements. Not only will that help you figure out what your needs and wants are and where you can cut so that you land yourself in a place where you can become more financially independent and free through divorce. But it will also help you filling out your income and expense declaration and the boatload of financial disclosures that you have to do in a divorce. I also think that the sooner you can open a separate bank account, the better. If you are getting divorced, so you've been served or you did the service, right? You were the one initiating. It's time to open your own bank account. Even if you guys are living together, that doesn't necessarily mean, though sometimes it is quite necessary, that you need to change where all of the deposits go. But you want to start putting your money aside, at least to the extent that you can build some kind of nest egg, so that if you do have to move out, you can afford that deposit. You can figure out how to pay the first month. There's so many unexpected expenses. So get your own bank account. It will also help you track what is your expenses versus what is your ex's expenses. And remember, your ex gets to take all of their own costs. That is not your problem anymore. And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, Rachel, I could never come up with an emergency fund ever. I can barely make ends meet. Again, start thinking about side hustles. If you can just go pick up dog poop at a neighbor's house for $10. I know we used to have the kids do it, but why not? Take out some trash cans for one of your elderly neighbors on trash day and bring them back in. Most of these jobs can pay $10, right? It's easy to make $10 if you just are willing to put in a little bit of work and have a little bit of creativity. And $10 a week totally adds up. If you can figure out how to earn $10 a week and put it aside and not use it, you are very quickly going to find yourself with a larger pot of money that can be used in a year or two, like Lisa, to buy a house. Being financially independent leads to more confidence and 100% feeling more in control of your life. So what have you done, or what could you do as you navigate divorce and you sign off of this podcast that could make you a little bit freer, be in a little bit more control? How could you earn just that extra $10? Think about it. Even if you're not going through a divorce, think about it. I could use an extra $10 per week. So let's be like Lisa, let's be like Joe, be like yourself, be like all of these people that have come back and turned around, looked in their rearview mirror and saw the entire history of their divorce and thought, gosh, my life is so much better emotionally, personally, financially, romantically after a divorce. Be that person. Create that path for yourself. And one way to start is to becoming realistic about financials and divorce and setting yourself up for success. And anyway, go find my book, Getting Divorced Now What? I talk about lots of things in there and, hopefully you'll find it helpful.
That wraps up another episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up. If you found value in our discussion today, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs these insights. Your engagement helps us grow and impact more lives. I'm Rachel King, thanking you for listening and reminding you to speak up, because every voice deserves to be heard.